Distribution provided by Cloud Sigma, the cloud that adapts to you. Visit cloudsigma.com/thisweekend for a free $200 credit.
Today's episode of This Week in Startups is brought to you by MailChimp. Manage lists with up to 2,000 subscribers and send up to 12,000 emails per month for free with MailChimp. And by TheResumator. Try TheResumator, the hiring solution used by today's fastest growing startups. Start a free trial at theresumator.com/twist.
Hey everybody, it's Friday, so it's This Week in Startups News Roundtable. There's a lot of news going on. Obviously, the Boston bombing and subsequent social media explosion, and Reddit is a major story this week, and we're going to dive very deep into it with Rafe Needleman from Evernote, formerly of CNET, and Michael Robertson, serial entrepreneur. Stick with us, and Karen's going to read the news, of course. Stick with us. It's going to be an amazing program.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah. Money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, I am Jason Calacanis. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've been building companies for 20 years, investing in them for 3 or 4, and hosting conferences and writing about them and hosting podcasts about them for over 20 years. I've learned a couple of things about startups and technology, and this program is where I share it and geek out about it with my friends and a larger audience. We've been doing it for 3 or 4 years, and now you're caught up. On Fridays, we do something called the News Roundtable, where we have a bunch of smart people come on the program and discuss what happened this week in technology. And it was a packed week. Obviously, sadly, the Boston Marathon was bombed, and then subsequently an incredible manhunt went on. That's still going on. It's Friday today, and it's still going on at this point with one suspect who has been killed by the police, and one who I believe, and who knows because this is changing at the moment, is still on the lam. And the interesting part about that, of course, is this is all playing out in real time. We're going to discuss real-time news and how that all is manifesting stuff, because it's very different today than it's ever been in history. We're also going to talk about Facebook's chat heads and that whole launch, and we're going to talk a little bit about
Google Glass.
Google Glass, yes, that's
Google Fiber.
Google Fiber, right? That was a big story this week.
Twitter's music app.
And of course the Space Monkey launch. And the voice you're hearing there is Kieran Kalia, who is the editor. What are you, managing editor?
You ask me this all the time.
What is your title? Editorial director. Editorial director, yes. I don't make the titles up here.
You told me I could use that.
You can use whatever you like. Editorial director, there you go, of the Launch Festival and, of course, This Week in Startups and the Launch Ticker. Let me just stop for a moment and pause for the cause to thank one of our partners on the program. That's MailChimp. There you go. That's the commercial. No, literally somebody told me the other day, like they emailed me, I'm using these 4 products that are on the show. So, the show is sold out 6 months in advance for advertising. And now we've got like these amazing, like new, big, large advertisers coming in. And, the show is built, though, off of people like MailChimp, these emerging software as a service companies that provide massive value to small businesses. And MailChimp is one of those. I've been using it literally for over 5 years. And they've been a partner on the program for probably 3. And what do we use it for? The Launch mailing list, for my Jason Nation email list. And you can start building a mailing list. And over the last, 10 years, they keep telling you, you have to focus on your MySpace page. You got to focus on your Friendster presence. You got to focus on your Twitter, your Facebook, your Google+. You got to focus on your website. You got to focus on your Tumblr. You got to focus on your Blogger. It's all nonsense. The one thing that has not changed for all of us in the last 10 years is our email address. We have a Gmail or a Yahoo or a Hotmail, God forbid, or an AOL. Oh, my God. But anyway, the point is, we change services. We move around socially on the web. We don't change our emails because that would be annoying to the people around us, right? So I'm going to be jason@calacanis.com for the rest of my life, and jasoncalacanis@gmail.com for the rest of my life. I'm not going to change those. And that's where building a business, if you had MailChimp on your website for the last 2 or 3 years and you collected just 3 emails a day, For 3 years, you'd have 3,000 people who are interested in your product, and you'd have their email addresses. Guess what? I got over 30,000 people on the launch email. So when I host an event or do anything, I just email those people, hey, here's what I'm doing. Are you interested? And I don't need to have everybody interested. I just get a small portion of them, and all of a sudden there's 6,000 people at an event. And that's what I'm at the Launch Festival. And I really think the success of the events we do is directly related to our mastery of the MailChimp product. And boy, does it have a lot of features, and it's super affordable. You can do incredible new features like mobile-friendly email templates, and with version 8, you have multi-user access. So that means if you have a marketing person or your receptionist or your office person or your general manager, sends the emails, but you don't want to have that person have access to the email list because you think they might download it, or otherwise you just think for privacy reasons they shouldn't have access to it. Now you can do that granular user permission. So anyway, we use it. We do things like send the launch ticker, and I can see how many opens it has and what's the rate of open, how many were unopened on a given day, and how the list is growing. Just great stuff like that. And it's easy to use. So go ahead and thank @MailChimp. And if you don't have a MailChimp sign-up form, just promise me in the next 48 hours you're going to put it on your site. If you're not doing that, you are should I say something?
You're an idiot.
You're an idiot.
It's okay.
All right, I'm from Brooklyn. I'm going to be honest with you. If you were my friend, I would tell you, like, what are you, an effing idiot? Collect those emails. Own those emails. Own those relationships. If you don't do it, your competitors are doing it. And then, you spend all this money on your stupid Facebook page, and then they pull the rug out from under you. Remember, they did that? Facebook, you can't even trust those guys. But email, you're not having to go through a gatekeeper. No gatekeeper. And that's what MailChimp lets you do. Build deep, deep relationships with your customers, your constituents. And by the way, if you're a journalist or somebody who's just starting out their career, you're an entrepreneur, you need to build a mailing list as well. People come to your domain name, they come to your Facebook, your Twitter, collect those emails, and then communicate with them once in a while. That's what I did. I built a career off of it. Thank you, @MailChimp. All right, on the program today, Rafe Needleman is with us. He's now at Evernote running their new accelerator, very exciting new project we're going to hear about later in the news program because it's news in and of itself, but formerly of CNET. And of course, he did Rafe's Radar for a number of years, which was, for me, the Bible of the internet for a good 3 or 4 years in technology. Welcome back to the program, @Rafe.
Good to see you guys.
And yeah, we got you, and you sound great. Great microphone. Everybody can follow Rafe @Rafe, and also Michael Robertson, serial entrepreneur who did MP3.com and a bunch of other projects. Michael Robertson, welcome back to the program. And you can follow Michael @MP3Michael. And Michael, let me test your microphone one more time. Yeah, we don't hear you, but we'll work that out in a moment while the tech folks work that out with you. Maybe you have to just change your settings there. Okay, let's get to the first story. Kieran?
Well, we all know that the sad news of the week is Boston Marathon bombing.
Absolutely.
And this is relevant to us because of how it exploded on social media, as you pointed out. Mm-hmm. And all sorts of folks on Reddit and all over the place, frankly, speculating on which person it might be just based on all the photos and videos that were shared. Thousands of people watched Vine videos, shared photos on Twitter. Dennis Crowley of Foursquare's CEO was actually running the marathon and was stopped short of the finish line because of the bombing. He and all of his family were safe, however. And over the course of the week, speculation continued. You wrote a piece about, smart people should speculate, and there's maybe some disadvantages that come with crowdsourcing this sort of stuff. But this is the future. We live in it. And as we saw this morning, one of the suspects has been killed. The other one they're still tracking down. Boston's pretty much come to a standstill. The Cambridge Police Department, interestingly, stopped tweeting because they thought that the suspect himself might be following them, monitoring social media to see what's happening. Turns out that the suspect who was killed had a YouTube channel that included a playlist he created called Terrorists.
Right.
The suspect who's still missing, he has a Twitter account that people have discovered, and they're pretty sure it's him, @J_SAR, TSAR. He said some interesting things in there. So clearly part of the story. So where do we go from here?
It's a very interesting question. I think we are in an era where we can debate if real-time news is a good idea or not, and I think it's a healthy debate. It's not going away. Mm-hmm. And so we're not going to be, my position is we're not going to be able to stop this, right? You can't put, once people get CNN, which, when the first Iraq war happened, once they had realized, wow, I can watch the Iraq war occurring in real time, that was so addicting for people that they can't go backwards. And that's when you saw a proliferation of live news, right? MSNBC came out and Fox News and all those other channels to compete with it. Same thing is happening now, right? Blogs and news sources, and then, of course, social media. The really interesting thing is this is the first terrorist attack we've had, if you don't count school shootings as terrorist attacks and mass shootings as a terrorist attack, and that's a more religious debate. Not religious in the religious sense, but it's a polarizing debate. This is really the first one we've had in the Twitter, Vine, Instagram era. And so the thing that was absolutely certain was that we would figure out who had done this, and we would capture them on multiple videos. And that's exactly what I predicted, and exactly what transpired. But Rafe, you've been in the journalist business for a long time. Does real-time news concern you? Should it concern the general populace? And I guess, as Kieran said, where do you think this goes from here? I mean, we're obviously going to learn a lot, and we're going to do a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. But what are your general thoughts on this live coverage?
Well, it's both good for the public and very bad at the same time. I mean, I was watching, as I think a lot of people were, I was watching social media, Twitter and Facebook, as events unfolded, because there was more information there. Now, a lot of it was wrong, but the great thing about social media was, if you're an astute viewer, you could easily tell what was right, which bubbled up to the top and got reflected or retweeted or whatever, and what was wrong got quickly debunked. So it was an extremely efficient way to get information, even though it required a little bit of intelligence on the part of the viewer, which was cool. The bad part, of course, is that for terrorist attacks, media coverage is what it's about. Terrorism thrives on media. And the more you have people tweeting or Instagramming or vining photos of carnage, the more effective the terrorism is. And that's only going to get worse as social media becomes more pervasive and as more and more people walk around with broadcasting stations, which are soon going to be their point of view, the Google Glass or other glass products. So we're soon going to see terrorism as it happens to people, and that's literally a terrifying proposition. Yeah,
that was one of my observations in my email newsletter. We haven't even brought Google Glass into this. We're going to have the first-person perspective of somebody murdered by a terrorist, or just murdered in general, which gets really to Catherine Bigelow's Strange Days, which people were recording their experiences and then playing back for other people. But Michael, you were watching this and you were commenting on it in real time as well. What are your thoughts, about the world we live in today, where we're all participants in the investigation? Reddit, 4chan, they were doing good detective work, and you had a lot of hands trying to figure this out. Is it a positive that people on Reddit are so engaged in sorting through these images, or is it creating a lynch mob?
Well, I think it's net good, and it's unquestionably good, and I don't even think it's that bad. And let me explain why. There's this tendency to think that government is really good and accurate, and I'll point people back to the Atlanta bombing, where they targeted Richard Jewell as the suspect for literally years. So that was when the officials had control. They were misidentifying suspects. So I know that some of the criticism is, well, there are some people on the internet that misidentified a guy with a backpack or whatever, and they turned out not to be involved. But it's not like the authorities got it right for literally years. They ruined a guy's life because he didn't have the mass of social media to say, hey, it's not me. And so I think it was phenomenal. I think what you had was literally the next generation wanted photos that have video clips and links to still photos in 3 different angles. And the next generation will be live video, like 3-dimensional video like you're talking about, where the victim, you could actually look at from their perspective. Or even right now, there's one guy still out. They have his license number. How amazing would it be if that was popped into Waze?
Yeah.
And every Waze user, instantly became an investigator. So for me, the crowdsourcing is amazing. It's all good.
Yeah, see, this is, I think, what you'll hear out of the people who are in the technology businesses. Because we already understand how this technology works, we can see very clearly the upside to it. The people who are concerned about this are people with something to lose, which are the authorities in some cases, although I think that they're split as well. Some of them are like, hey, let us do our job, stay out of it, you're the public. But I think there's another group of them who are like, hey, we're not going to catch these people without tips, and the public can really help.
Well, the public has always played a role in that way.
Absolutely.
There have always been tip lines. This is,
but this
Twitter
is slightly different. This is people in a forum theorizing, and the photos with like the line of sight and the bag and was it drooping or not, and them finding out the pressure cooker model and finding out the bag model possibly. Like, this is a level of investigation that goes beyond I saw somebody on the subway, right? I'm actually actively trying to figure this out. Now, there is a next step. I will predict where this is going, which is hacktivism, which is starting to happen. We've had a number of high-profile assaults on young women, which resulted in suicides and other madness. And the hacktivists, as they're referred to, some people refer to them as anonymous, but anonymous is a collective of unknown quantities and also affiliations, but just hacktivism in general, they're going out and they're hacking into the accounts. Now, because these accounts have now come out, the social media accounts, you can be absolutely certain that a hacker, hundreds of hackers right now are trying to get into that Twitter account and getting the direct messages.
Well,
and they will release those direct messages, and they will find out who that person was in communication with, and they're going to go hack their Gmail accounts and hack their Facebook accounts, and they're going to get all of this. There might be 7 other people who are communicating with these 2 pieces of trash, these 2 absolutely horrible individuals who are considering doing plots. And you know what? The hacktivists don't need warrants. These guys are true vigilantes. Rafe, what do you think about the vigilante culture, the A-team culture, as I like to call it, this hacktivist A-team culture, where they're going to go not only solve the crime, but they're going to start committing, like crimes.
You call it the A-team culture. I call it an online lynch mob.
Right.
It can go either way. Look, you can find things that the police would never find because you've got crowdsourced information, because you've got incredibly smart hackers who are able to piece information together in a way that professionals right now cannot.
With no warrants.
And
no recourse.
The only thing we can hope is that the collective wisdom of the crowd tamps down the mistakes, the misidentification, or the errors, the getting somebody's name wrong and hacking into their account because their name happens to be the same as some other person who looks similar. And this kind of thing can go pear-shaped really, really fast and can ruin lives. I'm not saying this is not what needs to happen, because the wisdom of the online crowds is immense. And the skills that we can tap are immense. And the way we can draw connections are incredible. But there is a downside to it. I just hope that collectively we're all able to steer this in the right direction, but there's going to be casualties.
Michael, what are your thoughts on the lynch mob / A-team / hacktivists?
Well, I think if we move from investigative to punitive, where people take the next step and say, well, I'm going to meter out punishment, then I think there's some reason to be concerned. But there's another dimension, another way to look at this, and that is that we have now told every future terrorist, you will be caught, guaranteed. Before, it was the only challenge was, how can I surreptitiously slip in, plant my bomb and get out? Well, in today's world, they now know you will get caught. You will have photos, you will have videos. The society will hunt you down. There's no question now. I think that's great, because it tells all of these terrorists, you're going to be suicide bomber if you are a bomber. So I think there's another dimension here that future guys are going to have to not only try to get away with their terrorists, but they're also going to have to focus on getting away, which these clowns didn't even think about, right? They're still just walking around Boston as if they weren't going to get detected, which is astonishing.
That's the amazing part. They did not...
They didn't leave.
They didn't leave.
Blew me away.
Yeah, they don't seem to be all that smart. And, this is getting back to speculation, right? So now there's this other, and by the way, I think Michael makes a great point. The government gets it wrong probably more often than they get it right. I mean, the government is incredibly inefficient. And that's not a dig to cops or anything like that. But, the government is the government. We know that they're not super efficient. And the Richard Jewell case is just a perfect example of it. I mean, it's just perfectly analogous. Now, the New York, getting to the media side of this, the New York Post put pictures of 2 people saying these people are wanted by the FBI, and then like a little subhead that was like, for questioning. And it was like, wait a second, you're talking about Reddit being a lynch mob or a 4chan or whatever. And the New York Post, and listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that my expectation is the New York Post is going to set some kind of gold standard. But boy, did they F it up. I mean, and now it's like, and then there's another segue that happens there, which is MG Siegler was like, well, the tech blogs shouldn't be covering this because they're page view whoring, they're page view mongering. And I understand his point. There are people who are like tweeting, hey, check out this person with their legs blown off photo, get me page views, right? But one other thing I noticed was BuzzFeed, Gawker, Atlantic Wire, the Twitter discovery feed, the Twitter list that Dick Costello put out last night at midnight. He put out 2 Twitter lists that had been put together by Danny Sullivan. These folks were on it as much or more than mainstream news. So they actually were really good at sorting through online information and putting it together into narratives, because I think the mainstream media hasn't learned how to craft a story out of disparate pieces of social media. Rafe, what did you think of that issue that MG Siegler brought up of tech blogs shouldn't cover this, The Verge's and Mashable and TechCrunch are, page mongering? What did you think, Rafe?
I was agreeing with him until a friend of mine who's watching this right now said, well, I spend all my day on one of these sites, and when they started covering it, that's where I get my news, so it was okay. News is news. The tech blogs, certainly tech bloggers, are on the cutting edge of how we report and disseminate news. Mm-hmm. So if they were going to take the lead in saying, look, we're going to put a live blog up or whatever, or present this information in a new way, and it's going to get thousands or tens of thousands of viewers that CNN.com isn't getting because nobody trusts them because they're doing a terrible job, who's to argue?
Yeah.
That's what journalism is actually supposed to do.
Yeah, and I like the idea of tech blogs maybe going, I don't like the idea of them being like, here's another Gore photo, but I do like the idea of them saying, hey, we are monitoring this in a more deft fashion than other people, and we're gonna do our job crafting it. Domain Noob in the chat room says that these folks do not care, they just want to be famous. And this is what I thought was kind of interesting as well, was speculation. The common knowledge has always been, we should not speculate. We should not speculate. And I just thought to myself, is that the government telling us to be brain dead and not think or question? That seems wrong to me. I think intelligent people should speculate constantly. The first thing I thought was, are these, Al-Qaeda members? Are they Oklahoma City bombing members? Are they Tea Party some new radical piece of the Tea Party movement? Are they anti-tax people because it's the tax day? Speculate. That is a good thing to do. And I think we should be speculating even at this moment as to what their motives are, and subsequently. Michael, is speculation a good thing or a bad thing? Should we sit back and just let everybody do their job and not speculate on social media? Or should we engage in discussions about what's going on in our world?
Well, I think speculation is great. But to me, this last incident, there was a fascinating trend, and that was all the lines between media were blurred for the first time. Now, I've watched political debates with Twitter open, and so, you get a little taste of the tech world. But this time it was different. This time people were jumping from Reddit to online to the TV. I saw people saying, hey, you can listen to police scanners on the internet, and posting links, and then those links went down and people would say, hey, go to Ustream for a relay of the police scanner. So to me, it was fascinating because the whole distinct lines of broadcast media and the internet in this time completely vanished, and everyone was cross-pollinating and cross-referencing, and it was astonishing. I found it truly astonishing. I think it was a defining moment for internet media, blurring the lines and infiltrating mass media.
It did feel that way, where the people at CNN are in this bubble where they feel that they can't recognize other sources of information. They have to process it to us and then give it to us on a plate.
Boy, did CNN gets pantsed on this thing too.
Yeah.
Man, they just blew it. I mean, if anything, this was yet another shining moment for citizen journalism, for social media, and equally a defining moment as to what can go spectacularly wrong with professional media. I mean, social media is forcing professional journalists to raise their game. And there is still a big role. I mean, there is still a lot to be said for, this is the cornerstone coverage. This is the person who's going to have access to the mayor or the police chief because they have that relationship. That's a big responsibility, and this shows that the people who have that responsibility now have got to take it even more seriously than they ever have, because otherwise, who needs them?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I realized was I didn't turn CNN on once during this.
Me neither.
Any cable TV or
no? It was like, this is CNN is too slow. I'm watching the hashtag on Twitter last night for the town. What was the name of the town? It's
Watertown.
Watertown. So I just had hashtag Watertown in, and I'm just refreshing that, and oh my God, that was being told in real time. And the CNN people watching that, and they're putting a 15-minute delay because they're doing research on it, but I want to see what is actually occurring, and I was witnessing it in real time. Much more interesting.
And what about the attack on Reddit? Who's doing this denial of service attack if Reddit is maybe one of the good guys here?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, they could be when you see this kind of malicious stuff going on, you have to realize there's a huge contingent of people who are just trolling, and they're doing it for fun. Like, oh, wouldn't this be a great day to troll? Wouldn't this be a great day to take it down because people would notice and they would think, so people do this kind of stuff all the time.
You don't want to speculate?
Well, I speculate that it's people just trolling. Yeah, that's my speculation. Now, the speculation about these individuals, remember what I said to you, which was, these are my prediction, before I even saw the photos, these are lone wolf inspired by Al-Qaeda. How did I get to that? Only 3 people die, which is tragic. But when I looked at the math and the execution of the London bombings on 7/7, there were 4 terrorists there who killed 52 people. And they're saying there's 2 or 3 of these terrorists and they killed 3 people, and that the bombs were pipe bombs, basically, and that the bombs over there were those ammonium ones that just absolutely shrapnel the entire bus. And those were suicide bombers, and these were obviously coward bombers, right? I'm not saying that the suicide bombers aren't cowards, but there's a level of even more cowardliness to dropping it and running.
So they weren't sophisticated enough.
It's way not sophisticated enough. I mean, and
even though they rehearsed.
Finally,
supposedly.
what is the? I mean, with these terrorists, they could have killed more people with guns. They could have killed more people with cars. They could have killed. I don't understand. Like, I think one of the things this is where I think maybe I disagree with Rafe, is the more we see these photos of people being damaged and hurt and stuff like that, I think we're actually going to start to, because it's unfiltered now, understand the cost of these things and be able to put them in context. More people die texting and driving in the next week, sadly, than will have died in the Boston Massacre.
Sure.
All life is sacred. I believe that. But the fact is we do have to contextualize this. This is something we can get through. And even the September 11th bombings, as tragic as they were, and 3,000 people dying, we got through that too, and more people have died from drunk driving than that, right, in that period of time. So, Rafe, do you think we're actually getting more terrorized, or are we getting desensitized? I think we're getting desensitized, and we're being able to contextualize, the loss of life, which I think we were softies as Americans this generation. We never experienced any death.
Boy, there's several years of graduate psychology work and everything you just said right there. It's a question of control. It's a question of violence. It's a question of media. And I don't know how this thing works out. I'm not in Boston right now. I don't know what it's like to be in Boston. I can't imagine. I can only imagine that it's awful to be locked in your house while the entire military, it seems, searches for a skinny kid who happened to make a couple of bombs. That's a total mismatch. By that estimation, by the way, the terrorism in Boston is incredibly effective. The entire city is shut down. The entire country, the entire world is looking at this one guy. It is the most visible, inefficient act of violence I've ever seen. Considering the amount of damage done and the amount of number of people it has terrorized. Drunk drivers don't terrorize people en masse. They kill people, and we're desensitized to that. This is in our backyard, and it's out of our control, and that's what terrorizes people.
What are your thoughts?
I don't think that will change.
But Rafe, don't you think this is overreaction? Putting the entire city of Boston in lockdown is just ridiculous overreaction. It's a chance for them to roll out all of the super duper heavy duty Homeland Security weaponry that they've been buying for the last decade. Totally overreaching, and people should go on with their lives. And shutting down the whole city, I mean, that's just overreaction and the government flexing their muscle.
It's a completely understandable human overreaction to a loss of control, and we have the equipment, so now's the time to use it. You know, we've got all the SWAT gear. When else are we going to use it when there's a guy running around who still has a backpack full of bombs? And this is the time to use it. And yes, it's an overreaction, but it's human nature. Yeah, and they also, I think I don't know if you can fly in and out of Boston right now. They shut down Logan.
They shut down Amtrak.
They shut down Amtrak. Shouldn't they be letting Amtrak go and just putting every off-duty police officer from outside of Boston onto the trains looking for this piece of garbage? I mean, obviously he's going to try to hop a train. Good. Let the trains run. I agree. This is like some – listen, and I think also having police officers – I have police officers.
One more person is killed because of this terrorist, and it's because he was on. If he bombs a train, for example, and the train the criticism will be it's because the trains are running. So
the cost is so great. People are covering there.
But the CYA that's going on here is understandable.
I guess so. I mean, listen, I have a lot of cops in my family. My brother Josh was a cop for a long time, so I understand. They also want to get the guy who got their guy, right, and who got the people of Boston. So there's a lot of pride with the cops. And my other hope is they don't kill this kid. As much as I would like to whack the kid, I think the kid needs to get caught, and we need to really get inside his head and figure out what was going on here.
Exactly, but he might kill himself before they can do that.
Yeah, they usually do. All right, listen, this whole thing is horrific, and you know this is always a tough part of the show when you have to segue. But we're going to segue into some stories about Google Glass and some other things. And our hearts go out to the people of Boston. It's a very tough city. It's a great city. It's great people there, and obviously they've already worked through it. They've already, carried on. The resiliency and spirit of that city is very strong, and the people are very strong. So, and I'm looking forward to the Boston Knicks game tomorrow, and I am rooting against Boston versus the Knicks. But I will tell you, I do love Kevin Garnett and that team, and I have a lot of respect for that city. So I think that's why New York and Boston, just a little side tangent, like New York and Boston, we have a big rivalry, but it's because we're so similar, and like we have so much common DNA. I really like guys from Boston. I really like the town. I spent a lot of time there over the years, and it just, hearts go out to all the people there. And go to the Boston PD. You have my tremendous respect going out there and risking your lives every day doing this kind of stuff. And then, what the other thing is, like, now everybody, the speculation, when we get back from commercial, I want to ask Michael about taking this and politicizing it. Because Michael and I have a lot of discussions about gun control on the show. Not on the show, on Twitter.
On Twitter, I was going to say.
When we get back from, save it for back from, hey, listen, let me stop for a second and thank my friends at TheResumator. We're hiring here, looking for a new executive producer for the show, correct?
Yes.
And we want somebody with like 5 years experience doing like CNN or something. Well, maybe not CNN given their performance, but maybe somebody who did like, what's a great radio show?
Other than Howard Stern?
Well, Howard Stern's got a good producer, Baba Booey, but like somebody who's worked on some talk radio show who could really like maybe up my game a little bit and give me advice on how to be a better host, something like that. So if you know somebody like that,
somebody who's done TV, local TV news.
And maybe local TV news. I kind of think talk is better, but and somebody who just loves startups and entrepreneurship and thinks they could level the show up. The way we get those resumes in is by using this wonderful product called TheResumator. And TheResumator is a great story. The founder of TheResumator was on...
Don Charlton.
Don Charlton was on an Ask Jason in the first 20 episodes of the program.
Yep.
Then he was a guest. He raised a bunch of money. And now he's a sponsor on the program. And I've been using the product since he told me about it the day he told me. I said, that's a great idea. I don't have to get all these resumes in through email and make an Excel spreadsheet to track them. I can just have them all go into TheResumator, and you'll normalize...
It's so much better.
All the PDFs, and we'll be able to do the sorting of them and say who's a good candidate and who's not, and who's been hired and who hasn't been hired, and track all that stuff. We get hundreds of resumes in a week to the different companies I'm involved in, and we sort through them really easy. It works awesomely. And the thing that you guys did particularly well was you asked people 4 or 5 questions.
Yep.
So they can't just submit their resume. In order to submit their resume, they have to answer 4 questions.
Yep.
So they see the job posting on Indeed or
Wherever.
LinkedIn or
Craigslist.
but they get a link that sends them to the Resumator. And then what were the questions we asked people for the executive producer?
We asked them who should be a guest on the show who hasn't already been on the show.
Who should be a guest on the show who hasn't been already on the show? That's a great one.
And we asked them to take a tech news story and put it into bullet point form just to make sure they know how to write.
Got it. Okay, that's
that requires a little bit of work,
right?
Also, and then
so now you're about 20 minutes of work to apply for the job,
right? And then asking them what it takes to be a success in life and why they want to work for a startup.
Got it. That's awesome.
And actually, I had one person who I sent those questions to who wrote me back and said, thanks, but no thanks. Like, knew right then, didn't want to go further in the process.
Because they answered them?
Didn't want to deal with answering questions.
Love it. Okay, so listen, hey, market your openings on free job boards, your website, and social media. Screen resumes based on job criteria. Track applicants through the hiring process. Hire employees efficiently. Stay competitive by reducing time and cost per hire. You may know some of the customers. Instagram, Pinterest, Hootsuite, everybody uses this product. It's like MailChimp. It's just everybody uses it. It works out great. And when you start using it, it's so affordable. You're going to be like, Jason, I started using the resume. That's what happens. Like, I'm in a bathroom and I'm like, hey, I use the resume. I'm like, great, I'm trying to take a leak. I'm glad to use MailChimp, but you don't have to, when I'm like taking a leak there. It happened. Literally, I was in an airport. Guy's like, oh, I love the show, MailChimp. I'm like, all right, it's
guys have a much more awkward situation in the bathroom than women do.
Yeah, we're not.
Right?
We're not in a stall. But anyway, listen. TheResumator.com/twist. Get a free trial. Resumator. TheResumator.com/twist. And thank @TheResumator. So, Michael, you and I have a lot of interesting debates. What do you think about people who are starting to look at this and then attach? And I don't know if you've done this or not. I can't remember, but attach a political point of view to a tragedy while it's occurring. Inappropriate, not appropriate, who cares?
Well, part of it is wholly partisan. I saw some early reports saying, well, Obama cut spending on bomb detection, in one of his budgets. That's just preposterous, to assume that people have that kind of foresight to predict when crazy people are going to act crazy. So I think a lot of it is partisan driven. However, you can't deny, I think anyone looking at this, that this was Islamic jihadist guys. They were definitely influenced by that. And so to the extent that that's political, I think it's undeniable.
Yeah. So, I think handicapping that. But what I was sort of referring to was more your first example where people are like, Obama, or whatever it happens to be. Somebody actually, Cenk from the Young Turks was like, the moment it happened, like an hour after it happened in his stream, he's like, everybody's going to make a million complaints about, this is going to be like headline news forever, and it's, but if you shoot somebody, it's not, right? And so gun control, and like somehow equating like weak gun controls with bombings, and I just wrote back to him. I was like, you know what? I don't think that's the right timing. And like you have to be a little bit sensitive. And then there's these other people who try to do marketing around this stuff. This is a message to people who it's their first time being an entrepreneur. If you make any kind of product or software and then a tragedy occurs and then you try to attach your service or product to that tragedy, you are a huge douche.
Unless you're trying to help.
Did you really see that?
Not this time, but I see it every time.
Like
That's
Airbnb.
a great pro PR tip.
Saying,
sit it out, absolutely.
Yeah, no, like Airbnb. Yeah, exactly. Airbnb saying no, but even like if
people
somebody's
in Boston opening their homes and that's
so if Airbnb said, like Google did it very definitely. They're like, hey, we have a missing person tracker, here's a missing person tracker.
Yeah.
But when other people do stuff like but even Airbnb, I think is like if you need a place to stay, go use Airbnb. No, Airbnb community self-organizes to offer rooms for free, or Airbnb pays for the rooms for people to stay. Fine. But you have to be very careful. And like Rafe says, just sit that out. I've seen actually, when was the last time? Somebody was doing something about the hurricane, and people died in the hurricane. And it was like people lost their homes. And I was like, it was a startup I was involved in. And I was like, I know that you're.
It was Uber. Uber changing the price of taxis in New York City.
No, that wasn't the one.
No?
This was somebody who was doing a promotion. That was just like, they should have turned off surge pricing because it was a tragedy. But that was like one of those things where we have surge pricing built into the system. It's not like somebody's like, oh, there's a tragedy, turn surge pricing on. It's like surge pricing is part of how the marketplace works on Uber. So they didn't turn it off and realize, oh my God. So that's just like a first time rookie mistake of, dealing. It's not a rookie mistake. It's a unique situation. It's an edge case is what you would call it in the business. But if somebody was doing an e-commerce thing, we're like, hey, for every purchase you make, we're going to donate to victims. And I was like, I don't feel comfortable. We had a big debate back and forth. But anyway, sit that out. Don't do that. Just make a quiet donation and keep it to yourself. So let's do the story. What's next? What's the biggest story of the week?
So I think we could go with Google Fiber if you like.
Yeah, let's do Google Fiber. It's a big deal.
Because we know that you're a fan of the fiber.
Who's not a fan of fiber?
Who's not a fan of the fiber?
Yeah, freaking break.
All right, so
we did this last week.
We did this last week because we talked about Austin, and now it's Provo, Utah. But differently here is they've gone in and they've bought an existing network, and they're promising to upgrade it to 1 gigabit.
Just to be clear, they launched the first.
Kansas City.
Was Kansas City a year ago, and they did a year of people lobbying them for which city would be first. They did Kansas City. Then they announced Austin.
Last week, yes.
Yeah, like 10 days ago or something, right? Then, a couple of days later, they announced that they had purchased a company in Utah.
Provo, Utah.
And that company does fiber. So that is...
It was sort of a government-backed thing. They did a bond, and so the citizens of the town are still going to be responsible for paying off the bond. Mm-hmm. But Google bought it for $1 with the promise that they were going to upgrade the network.
Fantastic.
And so there's still some city council vote that has to happen next week before everything is official.
But that puts them at 3 cities.
Yes.
So, Michael, do you think we're going to see Google take this to 100 cities? Do you think this is their takeover plan, as I was speculating, or do you think it's still a hobby or slightly more than a hobby? And what does it mean if Google is the pipeline, the search engine, the content, and the ad network, and the device?
Well, it's wonderful speculation. I did read your piece on it, and I thought it was insightful. However, at this point, to me, it's simply a prototype. This is just a little lab thing for Google. I don't think they have lots of foresight about, hey, we're going to put fiber in the top 50 metros or anything like that. I think they're just seeing, hey, what happens if we can control the whole stack all the way to the endpoint in your home? So I don't think there's much more thought. I know people always want to assign, oh, Google has this brilliant, 20-year plan. Nonsense. They're just doing lots of little experiments. They wisely shoot some of them when they go sideways, which is rather refreshing. But I think they're just playing it out and seeing how it will come together, and also putting pressure on the incumbents as well.
And what do you think they're trying to figure out in these tests? Like, what will they see in Austin or Provo, Utah, or Kansas City? What do you think they'll see on the network activity or something that would make them say, yeah, we could do more of this?
I personally think they're looking for what's the killer app on fiber. I still don't know what it is. If I can push HD Netflix to my house, what do I need fiber for? So I think Google is experimenting to see, what will people do? Is there a killer app? What is the killer app? Do we need some new steps in hardware or 3D conferencing or whatever to make gigabit fiber interesting? I think it's just an experiment.
Yeah, I'm very interested. This is what I think. If they see an uptick in usage on YouTube and on searching and clicking on ads, those two things could be greatly impacted. Like, perhaps you'll watch 3, 4, 5 times as much video on your laptop and computer from YouTube, which means they will get 3 to 4, 5 times the amount of revenue. Maybe they see you do 2 or 3 times as much searches. Maybe they have an ad unit for search that's video or something that they're sort of have hidden. So there's got to be something that they're looking at when people's usage. Or, like Michael's saying, they could be just putting pressure on the net neutrality issue and continuing to raise, right? So when you're playing poker, you can bet pre-flop, you can bet on the flop, the turn, and the river. You get 4 betting sessions. They're just going to keep pounding some chips in there and saying, hey, we can do this all day. We're rich, and we print money.
It worked last week in Austin. I think it was AT&T that came out and said a day later, we're going to do fiber in Austin.
I mean, they're really holding people's feet to the fire. Rafe, what is your take on this? Is Google getting too powerful now that they control the entire stack? Does it worry you in any way?
Not yet, and they only control it in 3 cities. I mean, they couldn't get it into San Francisco. They couldn't get the free Wi-Fi into San Francisco, where every resident wanted it. But I think you wrote about one of the twists on this is that if you get the free Google Fiber in your house, you also get a mesh, essentially a mesh Wi-Fi node. So what they're really doing in these cities is installing pervasive Wi-Fi with unbelievable coverage because it's in all the houses.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that they've announced that yet. That was my speculation based on the phone investment, FON, and the other 4 or 5 free Wi-Fi tests they did with Boingo, with Virgin America.
That's where the real opportunity for Google is to, because everybody's already got internet in their house and everybody's already got varying quality of mobile broadband. What they don't have is a reliable, high-speed mobile Wi-Fi. And if they do that, that's the real opportunity. That will drive usage, that will drive, hopefully, ad revenues, and it'll give them more information than they have right now on how people use
see, this is what I think is the other piece,
wireless.
too. I think Rafe just very subtly in the end there, you probably didn't catch it, but you can rewind about 30 seconds on your Stitcher radio or TuneIn or whatever app you use. They will now know everything you do on your computer.
Yep.
They will know everything you do. Right now they know what you searched for, where you went in the search. They know Chrome, but Chrome has some limitations on it. Now they're going to know the entire data level. So if you're using a video game, you're playing StarCraft and it's sending data, they now know you're a StarCraft player.
And how many hours you play.
And how many hours you play. Very good punch up there, Karen. So they're gonna start knowing a lot of things about you, which is incredible. They could potentially run the cost of this down to, and they already offer, a 5 gig for free is the idea. You can get fiber to your home for 5 gig for free.
5 meg.
5 meg for free, and a gig for whatever, hundreds of megs and gigs.
$70 a month.
It's ridiculous. So I think they could keep lowering the price of this, and they never need to make any money off of it. And then, obviously, they did the same thing with devices. The devices are getting close to free. This is, well, let me ask my panel, Michael, who is most in danger here? Is it Apple, or is it Verizon?
That's a good question, and I don't have an answer, but I love Rafe's point about the impactful thing here would be pervasive Wi-Fi. That would put huge pressure on the Verizons of this world, who, you've got 2, 3 operators that control mobile internet access. And so if Google were to create pervasive Wi-Fi clouds, to me, that puts huge pressure on the Verizon, AT&Ts of the world.
Yeah, this is a big project. Let me ask the same question I asked last week. If you could have a Google self-driving car, Rafe, Google Fiber, or Google Glass this afternoon when you get home, or tonight when you get home, which one would you want to have waiting for you at home? In order.
Well, I know, I saw your story on this, and I already have a nice, fast connection.
You have fiber? What do you have?
I got Comcast. It's 12 megabit. It's fine. It's awesome, actually. It's faster than I need.
Okay, so gigabit for the same price. Let's hear your ranking order.
What?
So, okay, let's assume so the comparison would be a gigabit.
I don't know. Probably the self-driving car, because that's the living in the future thing. The glass, I'm going to wait for the next generation, and I already got the fiber, and it's cheap enough.
Okay, so that's the opposite. Michael, what's your order?
Well, it sure as hell ain't a Google self-driving car. Yeah. And that's because I don't want to lose control over where, how, when I drive. And that is absolutely where that goes. As soon as you're in a car that's connected to a central authority, they're going to make sure you don't go past the speed limit. They're going to make sure you don't go here, and they're going to track every bit of your movement. So I don't want no damn self-driving car.
So that's not even on your list.
As intellectually it is, I took cognitive science at UCSD, and one of our AI projects was trying to build an AI engine that would keep a car on the road. So from an intellectual standpoint, I agree with Rafe, it's very cool. But from a civil libertarian, I think it will be horrible for the government to ultimately be able to track you and control how you move about.
I mean, it makes a good point. And sometimes Michael seems like a little bit of a fringe nutcase when he talks about this stuff, but it is a core freedom.
Sure.
Freedom of movement is a core freedom, right? And now, what if you get in that car and you can't go over the speed limit, right? Or it says, we're not allowing people on that road right now, and we're going to divert you, and you can't go down that road, right? Or whatever it is.
The self-driving cars are not going to be what take our driving liberty away. It's the insurance companies and the monitoring systems they put in the cars to raise your rates if you drive too fast or too aggressively too often.
Right.
That's where the civil liberties begin to erode. Self-driving cars are further on down the line.
Go ahead, Michael.
Rafe, I'm going to challenge you on that and say, listen, you have an option to take that with insurance company. You're making a choice to say, hey, I'm going to put a monitor. I'm going to put a monitor on my car and pay more or less or whatever. That's not the fear. The fear is when the government does it, because companies can't throw you in jail. Companies can't charge you more taxes and confiscate some of your money. Let me tell you what's going on in San Diego. I'm involved in a challenge here in San Diego over the use of LPRs. LPRs are license plate readers. What they're doing in San Diego, and when I say they, I'm talking the government, is that every police department car, every sheriff car in the entire county, those little signs that say how fast you're driving, they have LPRs, license plate readers, that scan your license plate when you drive by. Now, the theory is it's all about safety. We're looking for pedophiles or stolen cars, fine. But that's not the concern. The concern is, you know what they do with that data here in San Diego, and they're actually doing it in lots of other metropolitan areas? They aggregate all that data into one master database and compile it, so now the government can track wherever you go. That's happening right now in San Diego, and if you don't think that the driverless car is going to be connected into that, you're crazy.
That's really disturbing.
So,
go, Rafe.
I'm completely with you. That is terrifying and disturbing, and I don't want the government, or Google for that matter, knowing where I am at all time. But what if that technology could help us catch the Boston Marathon bomber because he was driving around that CRV and it looks like 1,000 other CRVs within a 10-block radius? What then? Where do you draw? Who runs this? Who does the oversight to make sure that the right data goes in the right hands and is not used for the wrong purposes? Where's the line between civil liberty and actually protecting us?
Well, you can always make that case about safety. If we do this, we can track those pedophiles, make sure they don't get close to schools or whatever argument you make. But we live in a society where you don't assume people are guilty. You don't track every person. Let me tell you what I did. I put in a California Public Records Act request to the government entity that is aggregating all this data, and I said, hey, I want data on my car. Show me where my car's been. They refused, and you know what they said? We're not going to give it to you because it's part of an investigation. An investigation, really? So you're investigating all 4 million people in San Diego. And that's happening today. This is not theory. This is not a book about what could happen. So they will always attack civil liberties under the guise of, we're making it safety. We're looking out for you guys. And we have to reject that and say, no, when there's a crime, then you go and investigate. And when society has a choice of being more free and letting bad guys walk, that's what we always should choose, is innocent until proven guilty.
Rafe?
I'm actually not going to dispute that. I think you put it very well. I do not like the idea of anybody tracking where I go. I think as more technology becomes available to collect this information, that these arguments have to happen. The stupid Bay Area toll-taking authority, records every time you go over a bridge. That's the baseline of this kind of thing. And they say in their records that they erase their data after 30 days over which bridges you've been over. And then 60 days after that, you get a printout showing which bridges you've been over in the last 10 days or the last 2 years or whatever it is. They don't know how to erase this data. So as this data is collected, and it's going to be collected, if not by speed cameras, then by smartphones or by Google Glasses that individuals are wearing and uploading the data to their own personal clouds, the data is going to be collected and aggregated. The question is, who is responsible, or who's going to take responsibility for making sure that it goes to the right places?
And this is the issue, Rafe.
Yeah, it's impossible to solve, sir.
If the information is collected, it's going to be compromised, it's going to be abused. If I know anything in my 25 years in the internet and technology, is I knew IT guys who were reading their bosses' email exchanges about them when I was at Sony. And when they were negotiating their salaries, were reading both sides of the discussion on the mail servers, right? And they were laughing about it. Like, if information is out there, it's going to be compromised. It's happening every day. And I think what you're hearing here on the program is there is going to be another battle that's going to occur, and it's going to be between, control of citizens through data and our personal freedoms, and then this very religious battle, and it gets back to guns as an example. Everybody wants to know why we can't make any progress on guns, right? We get no background checks, no limitations on anything. I'll tell you why. Because the government is doing such sinister things, like how they're treating Michael right now in terms of the recording of the license plates, and they're filibustering and they're flexing their muscle, and they've got this like little ounce of power that they have this data and they're being jerks about it. That's the kind of thing, and those kind of government behaviors build to this level of mistrust of the government, that the government is out of control, and we elected them and they still don't obey us, right? Like they're on their own mission to do what they want to do, and the citizens who are paying their salaries and paying the taxes have no influence over it, right? It makes people crazy, which is what's making Michael crazy about, that's my data, it's my license plate, why do you have it? And we have a Freedom of Information Act. You have to tell me. You're the government. You have to tell me what information you have on me. And so I understand where actually the Second Amendment gun rights people are coming from, which is do not give an inch. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it very clearly. They are absolutely 100% correct that background checks is the first step. Clips and the amount of bullets in the clips is the second step. The number of guns you own is the second step. Where are those guns right now? Do you, $1,000 in insurance for the gun is the next step, and it's just going to be to the point at which it becomes so onerous to own a gun that you're not going to be able to, and then they've disarmed the populace. Now, it seems crazy that we don't have the ability to do a background check on somebody buying a gun, or say you can't buy 500, but you can buy 50 or something, or that you have to have insurance, or you have to have them in a lockbox. But this is the level of polarization. I blame the government, the heavy-handed government people, for putting in the minds of the people who are Second Amendment that there is no reasonable compromise to be made. Michael?
Well, so I largely agree with what you say, but the background checks, we do background checks in California. That's the law. There's no gun show loophole, as the president talked about. It's the same in Connecticut. There's no background. Any buyer gets a background check. So the notion that this would solve anything or reduce, or stop Newtown is just factually incorrect. So I guess my big issue is trying to make new laws over outliers invariably leads to bad law.
Unintended consequences.
Exactly. And so when you look at Newtown, yes, it's a travesty. When you look at Boston bombing, absolutely a travesty. But to make new law around these obscure, random, crazy people, that doesn't make sense. If you want to stop gun deaths, legalize drugs. Because gangs killing each other, that's the huge driver. The majority of gunshot deaths are from gangs fighting over drug turf. So if you really care about that, then go after that. Don't go after, use the outliers of Newtown to come up with some new crazy laws.
It feels like our society is really headed to either a great reconciliation on these issues, like we could actually have a grand debate over these issues because they are all interrelated. Obviously the drug cartels are the ones who are buying a lot of these guns and a lot of stray bullets. And then, the disparity in wealth and income and just these other issues in society, unemployment, cost of taxes. I mean, we really have to figure this stuff out with a reasonable dialogue. And people from other countries, we had Matthias on from
Sweden.
From Sweden, and it's just like, I think a lot of people look at the United States and go, why can't you guys agree on anything and get anything accomplished? And technology is it just exacerbates this stuff to a level that people can't even figure out. Let's do another story.
All right.
Let's do Space Monkey. Let's play the Space Monkey clip. Here's Space Monkey demoing at the launch festival. Go. How many people think they would try Space Monkey and get 10 times as much storage for half the price? How many people would try it? Wow.
Thank you.
That's a big statement. That was almost everybody. So disrupting There's
to
Rafe.
use a word.
There's Rafe in the bottom right.
Which launched here at launch 4 years ago.
I love that company.
Congratulations to Space Monkey. Thank you.
Wow.
Well done.
So there was a great moment, right? Thank you for
Was
playing
it?
a video clip during the show. See how that made the show better?
I did.
This is one of our discussions: is how do we make the show better? And we thought during the news program, if you play a little clip, it could be exciting, and that was. That's the moment a year and a month ago when
Yep.
they launched on stage. Rafe was right there in the front of the audience as one of the members of the grand jury. Rafe, when you saw that product, Space Monkey, did you think it was too good to be true? And what do you think of it and their success today?
Well, I'm glad they finally shipped their T-shirt. I think it's Karen, it's good to see you wearing it. It's too late. I mean, I love Space Monkey. I think what they're doing is technologically amazing. I think the price point is dead on, $10 a month for a terabyte, and you still own it more or less. But the whole need for local storage, we still need it, but we're not going to forever, and I don't know where Space Monkey goes. Because right now, the only thing we need to store locally is video. Everything else can be stored fine in the cloud. And yes, Space Monkey is right. It's too expensive. And Space Monkey is a lot less expensive, like an order of magnitude less expensive. But the whole idea of a business based on local storage in a less expensive infrastructure gives me the willies.
Yeah, I've had one for the last 2 months upstairs, and I've been playing with it. The software is getting better and better, and it works. It works as advertised. You have a terabyte in the cloud, and I'm an investor in the company, full disclosure.
So what are you putting on there?
Right now, it's been experimenting mode, so I've just been dumping like movies and stuff like that on there. So I'm not actually putting my own data on there yet. I use multiple drives. I have a Drobo unit at home, and then I do backups to hard drive, and I do a time machine to a hard drive. Because I have videos and because I have over 100,000 photos, and so you can't really put it in the cloud. I have a Dropbox, but it would never be able to hold everything, or unless I paid, I don't know, $1,500 a year or something crazy like that, $2,000 a year. So it works, and people. The real exciting part, I think, is the Kickstarter project for the first run of the units. I have one of the undesigned units, so these are the units that are beautifully designed, but I have one of the runs that looks like. Well, you've seen it on my desk, but I'll show everybody else. And they don't have it here on the site. It just looks like a basic hard drive, with a little stand. So they had these prototypes that weren't gorgeous, but it looks like they sold out. They
sold out pretty quickly.
Yeah, $1,800, $200,000 in pre-orders, which as an investor feels good. So 1,000 people bought the $99 version, 500 people bought the $109 version, and 134 people bought the 1 terabyte, which I bought. Yeah, so I think they're almost out of all this stuff. It's great.
The really high level ones are still available.
Yeah, the $1,000 and $5,000 one. I don't know why you would buy the $5,000 one. I think they should have just had a little bit more granularity there, but who knows? But it's a great company. And it's a great device. I think it's still going to be needed.
So should Dropbox be worried?
Well, here's the thing. I think, 2 out of 3 users are not going to need more storage. And I think for some people, like Dropbox is kind of ingrained. So I'm going to keep both for a year as my plan. And then I'll make a decision. But I'm also buying 5 more of these to give to people at the office because we have video here. And
right.
So it really depends on how much of a power user you are. And so you're going to have this Moore's Law going on as to which one can be cheaper, Dropbox or this, and how big their network can get. But this could also be with peer-to-peer. A way, there's this whole other business of caching stuff locally and, being like a content delivery network. So if you have 100,000 of these out there and Netflix has the top 100 movie list and they put the top 100 movies out on the cloud, then they could be streaming those movies for free to people very close to them. It'd be a very interesting concept, right? So anyway, there's a lot of potential upside down the road. But have you been following it, Michael?
Just from a distance, it's a fascinating company, but I have to agree with Rafe that ultimately I think the macro trends are working against them. People don't have their own power generators because ultimately the economies of scales are so overwhelming that you just pay the utility company to do that. And I think that's the way that storage goes. So do they have an opportunity? Yes. For how long, I think, is the question. And if there's even more massive economies of scale, I think it's a very short window, but maybe it'll be slower.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing that could happen is, let's say you and I put 2 terabyte drives in our homes, but then there might be 5 other people who don't put them in their home. And by the way, I'm speculating. I don't have inside information, but let's say there's 5 other people who want to start a Dropbox-like service, but they don't want to have the hard drive. They could actually be using our drives at our places, so they could see really interesting. Or what if they did it where you didn't have to have the physical device? You could just turn your desktop hard drive and say, oh, this piece of it, this 500 gigs, I'm going to put into the Space Monkey cloud.
Well, how about tying it to Instabridge?
What's InstaBridge?
Was at our festival last month. So the guys from Sweden who said that you don't have to get somebody's password to use their Wi-Fi.
Right.
And you can just walk around town, and whoever's friends of your friends and have given you Wi-Fi permission, you're on their network.
Yeah. So yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, well, a lot of opportunities there, but let's do another story.
Okay, so I think we should talk about Evernote.
Oh yeah,
this
is pretty interesting. We got Rafe here.
So Rafe knows this part of the story very well about the accelerator, that they're going to be doing a 1-month-long residency program at the headquarters in Redwood City.
1 month, got it.
And the folks who are eligible for that have to first do the Dev Cup. So they had 2,000 developers participate in Dev Cup last year. These are people who are just building things that work on Evernote.
Got it.
Now, the partners they have involved, Docomo Innovation Ventures, Honda's Silicon Valley Lab, and they're going to do this fall for a month. And there's going to be a gala, which they're also basically calling it Demo Day.
Good.
And so that's part of it. And then, of course, Phil Libin did come out this week and talk about Evernote wanting to build hardware. And
yes.
So there's some interesting things going on at Evernote. Perhaps Rafe could elaborate.
Well, I have 2 things to say about Evernote first.
Okay.
I will interject. Number one, I got LiveScribe, the LiveScribe, because I had used LiveScribe like a couple of years ago. It's a fancy pen. You're writing a book with a grid, and then it will record it to like PDFs, basically. And so I had it a couple of years ago, and it was a pain in the ass. You had to like plug it into your computer and sync it, and I always forget, and the battery would die. But now they have a Wi-Fi model where, I'm just up in the office there taking notes now, and I've started taking notes because my short-term memory, because I got so much on my mind, it's just hard for me to remember stuff. But I find if I write stuff down, even if I never look at it again, my retention goes up, or my thinking about it goes up. So I just like writing stuff when I'm in a meeting. You probably noticed I've been writing more in meetings. So I've been writing in meetings, and it automatically syncs it up to my Evernote. And now I actually stumble upon it, every month or so. I look at notes I've made and say, oh yeah, I should call that person I had a meeting with, or I forgot about that. So if I wrote a note, then I should review the notes. It works really well. Then number 2, I found an incredible use case for Evernote today.
And that is?
I went to my daughter's first parent-teacher conference.
Oh, lucky you.
And I just thought to myself on the way in, I wish I had a recording of my first parent-teacher meeting, like my parents meeting with them about me.
Right.
So I said, let me turn my phone off. And I snuck into Evernote, hit the record key, and laid my phone on the desk recording in Evernote.
You didn't tell the teacher?
Did not tell the teacher.
Ooh.
Did not tell the teacher, because I didn't want it to screw up their performance. So I taped the 30-minute thing. I'll never play it publicly. And my plan is 30 years from now, I'll give it to my daughter when she's 33 years old and say, hey, by the way, here's your first teacher conference to blow her mind. And I also started london@calacanis.com, so she has her own email. So once in a while, I'll email her a little note about.
Someday she'll be able to check and see what you said to her.
It's pretty cute, right?
But you're not tweeting as her like some folks do.
No, I'm not going to. No. Sean Percival tweets as his kids or something like that.
Well,
I think Percival was doing that.
Sarah Lacey has email accounts or Twitter accounts for her kids.
And she's tweeting as them?
Ellie Kuda and Evie Kuda.
Oh, my goodness. All right. So, Rafe, what's going on? Yeah. Explain it to us.
So the accelerator, this is what I started at Evernote to do. So I've been covering startups for, 15 years? And I finally decided that I wanted to do more for them than just, do these little therapy sessions where I'd interview them and then write a column and then move on to the next one the next day. So we're doing this accelerator. So Evernote is not just a product, it's a platform. And one example of that platform in use is the LiveScribe pen that she mentioned. So that pen is awesome, and the back end for that product is Evernote. All the notes go into Evernote. And that's one product of the potential of thousands or millions of products that can be built to interact with people's Evernote data. So we love it when people build applications on top of the Evernote platform. We have a competition called the Dev Cup where people build apps, then they win prizes. And this year, the grand prize for 6 winners is a trip to our accelerator here at Evernote, where the participants will live nearby. We're going to put them up. We're going to give them office space here at Evernote, literally alongside our developers and designers, a startup curriculum and speakers, maybe you, and help them build their great prize-winning products into businesses and then help them on to their next phase. And one of the cool things about this accelerator compared to most of the other accelerators that I know and you know is that we're not taking equity in these guys. When these accelerator projects, when these businesses succeed and get people to use Evernote more and make Evernote users happier, that's the best possible outcome we could have. And that's the program I'm putting together, and I'm really
How much do you
excited and
give them?
terrified to do it.
Do you give them money? Do they get money or just a desk?
They get a stipend and expenses. We'll fly them out. We'll literally house them for a month nearby, maybe in San Francisco, maybe down here in Redwood City. We don't know yet. We'll give them a desk. We'll feed them. So we'll make it so it doesn't cost them anything to be in.
So it's
in
like
the
probably
accelerator.
10, 20 grand, I'm guessing, in expense.
Yeah,
per
I
company.
budget. It's a bit more than that budget-wise. And then we'll introduce them to all our friends down here.
That's
So-
a very cool idea. I just have to say, like, Phil
Thanks.
is really, you know, like, some people, they make a lot of money and they don't do interesting stuff. Like, but then there's like people like Mark Cuban or Phil, like, they have great success, and then or Larry Page, and they do really interesting things. Or Michael Robertson. So, Michael, what are you working on? Any plugs? Dar FM? What's good? What's good in your world?
Well, I'm still working on my DVR for radio, DAR FM, and we just launched Uber stations, so you guys can check that out. It's a list of nearby radio stations that you can listen to. But I'm also spending a chunk of my time, if you can't tell from this conversation, as a part-time government agitator. So trying to keep those buggers honest, and so that's been a lot of fun. Things like the LPR. Things like, I don't know if you know this, but if you're in California, you're paying to put HD programming in all of our prisons. So, you know, talking to our California Department of Corrections and telling me, you know, how much are we spending to put HD televisions and HD capacity into prisons? And maybe that's something that we shouldn't be spending money on. You know, things like that I'm spending a little time on.
And you are very... you're very provocative on Twitter. I have to say, if you're not following MP3 Michael, you should follow him because did you get into an exchange with Dennis Rodman the other day? And he replied to you? And then I jumped into that conversation too. That was what happened there?
I did. Well, you know, he goes over and he gives a hug to the Kim Jong-un crazy nut, you know, who runs prison camps and is an evil dictator. And so I bonked him a little bit and said, you know, maybe that's not the best thing to do. And he told me to pound sand. He's a basketball player.
Yeah, a big mean one too. Apparently.
Yeah, that was quite humorous that he even bothered to respond to me. So.
Well, I like that fact that people will respond. And, you know, I do think that Dennis Rodman, I mean, I know he got put up to it by, I don't know if it was Vice. Vice put him up to it or something. Vice. And it's just like, you know, I get what you're doing. It's kind of funny, you know, Team America. But the guy also has like 1 million or 2 million people in prison camps that are, according to the reports on 60 Minutes, very similar to the ones Hitler ran. You know, I mean, they may not be killing all those people, but they're torturing them on a daily basis. And so to go there and give a hug to that guy and be like, he's your friend and all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like saying, I'm friends with Pol Pot or, you know, Hitler. You know, like it's a very bizarre. And you know what? Dennis Rodman's too dopey to even. I mean, he's totally checked out. He doesn't know what he's doing. He has no idea what he's doing. It's like somebody gave him $25,000 and said, "Do you want to go there?" And he went. So he took a speaking fee and went there. And you know what? He's going to feel, I don't know, maybe he's not smart enough to feel stupid about it, but if Kim Jong-un does something crazy, like launch a missile into Seoul or Japan and kills, you know, 100 people or 1,000 people or 10,000 people or 100,000 people, or starts a, you know, major war, like, you're going to be the guy who went and was like, yeah, he's my dude. He's a cool dude, you know?
Well, and also Kim Jong-un must be a little bit peeved at the Boston Marathon bombers because they stole some of his thunder. It was their special day. April 15th was the birthday of his grandfather.
Oh, was it really supposed to be like the big day that everything?
It's supposed to be like their big day, and America got distracted. They weren't paying attention to North Korea anymore. Wonder how he feels about that.
It is interesting, like, the international situation. Anyway, listen, it's been an amazing program. Thanks to Rafe for being on the program. Everybody follow at Rafe, and thanks to Michael Robertson for being on the program. Everybody follow at MP3 Michael. See you next time, guys.
Take care.
Take care of Rafe. Take care of Michael. Great job on the program. And thanks, of course, to MailChimp and our friends over at TheResumator. Great to have you guys on board as a partner. And MailChimp, God, you guys have been so great to me over the years, both by making a great product and also just, you know, supporting the different events and stuff like that. It's really means a lot to me, so I do appreciate it. And thank you, Kieran Kalia. Very good job on the news today. We had another video. I didn't play the other video. What was the other video?
Oh, I thought it was kind of funny that Clint, when he was on your program last year, said that they were going to start shipping Space Monkey last summer. But that's a startup thing, right? Things don't
Yeah.
go the way you plan.
No, I've been on the emails like, you know,
Yeah.
oh my God, why are we so far behind? And it's like, oh, well, we're making hardware. Like if they had just made the software, it would be out right now.
Right.
You know, like if but you know, whatever. They got to pursue the vision, and it's people want a physical device, so they're going to give them physical. So, but was there another video from another?
Nope, that was it.
Oh, okay, wait, 2 for the same story.
Yep.
All right, listen, if you want the job as executive producer, God bless you, man. You have no idea what it's like to work with me.
And you have to be in LA.
You have to be in Los Angeles, right? It's a Los Angeles position, but just go ahead and do a search for that or email Kieran@launch.co. And we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups. Bye-bye. All right.